Hello, my name is Carmen and I am a targeted individual, and today's subject will be the implantation of targeted individuals. And I know very well that there are some of us who do not believe to be implanted, yet we did with an organization um, radio frequency scannings, and we came up with quite interesting results. 99% of TIs that have TI symptoms would emit radio frequencies from several spots on the body, usually the same, like the ears and back of the head, the top of the head, the forehead, the thyroid, the heart area, and also several spots on the spinal cord. And besides that, the sexual organs, the uterus in women, and several other places, usually connected to places where people had vaccines or operations, and sometimes on the hands and the arms. But the most common places are the ears. And some TIs have up to 13 or more radio frequencies emissions. And why do they have that? What can emit radio frequencies? Because the body itself doesn't. If not, some microchip, some implant that transmits and receives information. And having ear implants is like having, a phone in your ear, and therefore through that, um, some TIs communicate with the perpetrators. And even if you think that an implant must be a pacemaker eventually, or a tracking device, when they were first developed, these implants were developed for the purpose of messing with somebody's mind and brain. And already in the 40s and in that era, we had Jose Delgado that invented the stimoceiver, among other devices that he put in a person's or an animal's brain, and he could influence emotions and also behavior. He made a very famous experiment with a bull when he implanted this device in the bull's brain, and he could induce fear into the bull, so the bull backed off. And he also experimented on monkeys and cats and on human beings. And he came to the conclusion that human beings do not have a free will, and that's still a very popular idea in neuroscience today. Partially, he came to that conclusion because he would stimulate somebody's brain to lift an arm or to turn their head to right or um, left, and when asked about why they would turn their head or lift their arm, they would insist that it was their own choice. Therefore, Jose Delgado realized that people didn't know the difference between outer influence and manipulation and their own free will. And already at that time, these devices were used to manipulate people and their moods and their behaviors. And Jose Delgado was extremely outspoken about this technology, and he was a control freak, and he envisioned a future where soldiers would be remotely controlled. And during the same time, we had the first computers that were huge, and also the transhumanism ideas about enhancement of human beings with the aid of technology. But all these ideas, the vision about the psycho-civilized society that Jose Delgado had, led to a lot of criticism coming from, among others, the New York Times, but also from the leading scientists and professors and psychologists of that time. And therefore, this technology went underground pretty much. And during the 70s, the pacemaker was invented, but thereafter, nothing until a few years ago. And it's because this technology went underground and was still sponsored and developed. And today you had thousands of patents regarding implants that do not do much more than stimulate the nervous system in different way and can influence a human being. And it has probably been tested and developed on handicapped, mentally ill, and also TIs. We have TIs since the 60s. We had the MK Ultra, of course, in the United States, but similar programs were developed also in Europe. So maybe the TIs of our time reflect the scientific development of interest for both neuroscience but also military and so on of our time. And now we have all kinds of scientific breakthroughs about mind reading, about deep brain stimulation, and also, this is a good thing, I believe, the cochlear implants that are developed for the deaf, and transcranial stimulation, and also mind control robot arms, where people with locked in syndrome that can't move their body can move robotic arms with their minds. And because computers got smaller and we had nanotechnology development during the late 80s and throughout the 90s, also implants shrank very much. And we have this radio frequency scannings done on TIs and on X-rays, because these implants are so very small, they are not easily seen. And we basically can also think or assume that some of the implants are very similar to surrounding tissue, and therefore they might get quite invisible on X-rays. But during the 70s or so, there were some TIs that had X-rays done, and they were quite visible because these implants were quite large at that time. Now they have shrunken, they have changed, they have become more compatible with the body. Perhaps they are made usually of silicone, and some TIs have also rejected their implants from the ears and spine. And it's basically mostly because they probably had very strong immune system, and the fact that we usually also have the thyroid effects, it might mean that they are trying to lower our immune system so that we do not reject the implants in our body, because the body doesn't like them. They are devices put into the body. They do not belong naturally to the body. And these implants are extremely painful. They can not only harass TIs with voices and loud music and what have you, but they can also create impulses in the head. And I have a pain right now, right here. And sometimes it gets very, very bad. You know, it feels like the brain is going to explode, and it feels like your brain is cooking up. The headaches are horrible, and there is this blurred vision as well, and you can't see or you can't take in information properly. So it's like you read, but it doesn't reach your mind. But the worst, of course, is the pain, and it can start in the spine somewhere at the heart level, and it rises up. But the first pain the TIs usually feel is in the back of the head, and the torture can get so bad that it is almost it's absolutely excruciating. It's like stepping into hell, and it goes on sometimes day after day, 24 hours a day, month after month, year after year. And I lived with this pain from 2010 until 2014, when I stopped eating sugar altogether and carbs in general. And I now have tolerable pain, and it's not there every day. Today is quite an exception. Sometimes from time to time I do have it, and the headaches, and also the feeling that I'm not really in touch with myself. The years are feel like they, like you have pressure on your ears, and it's quite a mess. And this technology is still unregulated, and it has been here for almost 80 years, and it is definitely abused, used for torture, and maybe also for experiments, because these implants do emit and transmit information. And because now in neuroscience there are these developments, like developing of chips that can replace lost functions like memory and so on. And you can not develop these types of implants or chips that can replace lost brain functions on sick people. You have to develop them on normal people, and thereafter you can use it to replace the missing part in somebody who doesn't have it. On the other hand, these implants always mean that there is a control issue, because somebody is there monitoring them. They connect to computers, and they work with radio frequencies, just like mobile phones and the internet, things like that. I'm not very into tech, but that's how I understand it from reading it. And whenever you read about implants, they do not communicate with other things. I haven't found any information about other communication style than radio frequency, basically. So antennas are always important, mobile phone antennas and so on, and even Wi-Fi. And because this technology has a two-way communication system, they can also use it for brain entrainment. So let's say that I am doing very well, I am fine one day, and I want to write a very interesting article, and I do it well, and suddenly I hear this zzz in my ear, and the brain entrainment frequency comes in, and suddenly I am staring at the computer. I forget what I want to do, and so on. And sometimes it's like there are some implants that I perceive. I could be wrong, of course, and it's very difficult to know, but I perceive them as very small, and you kind of feel them moving around, and especially in the temples here, and it's quite painful. And also here, and there is a way to read somebody's mind by recording the movements here, because while you think, you unconsciously also have this movement here. And if you have some type of chips or microchips, nano implants around here, they can record that and read your mind, whatever you are thinking. And they seem to be extremely accurate. And it happens in real times as well. So I think that this technology is an intrusion in somebody's life and mind and body that I don't think anyone wants to have. And because the influence can be extremely subtle, and because we do not know the difference between influence and our own behavior, this technology must be regulated. And it's not just for me. I don't know, this implantation thing might also be irreversible in some cases. Maybe if you get these things in you, you connect and that's it, especially since some of the implants are so small. We also found that Magellan's victims have the same frequency emissions, and it's a complete negation of your human life, human worth. And once you have this technology in you, it's not that a question about having or not having any free will. It's a question of not being responsible for whatever you do. And because it could be influence, it could mess you up, so you can't have any responsibility, and that's too bad. And if the transhumanism movement has a success, and some believe strongly that it will, and in 20 to 40 years everyone will have chips in their brains being controlled from outside by an elite that might be free, a decision maker, or I think that it's it will be a very, very sad time for humanity, because you can't trust these people. They all they do, they are masters of manipulation and make believe. And if they do this to us, they will do it to anyone, probably even their own mom and children, because they simply do not care. And probably somebody listening to this can't even imagine the magnitude of what is happening, and how far this technology has come. And I don't understand everything either, because as I said in my previous video, they don't only use the implantation, that they use non-lethal weapons as well, or these frequencies coming in, and they also use drugs. And but for this mind control also to work, it's like they constantly have to lower your um, your self-esteem in some way, because if you do not feel that well, you are weaker, and then you are open to mind control, and therefore maybe there is so much torture we experience. And when I talk about torture, I talk about a pain that is excruciating, and that never, 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 ever stops. And it goes on day and night. And it's not only that, other things, stalking comes in, and their chemicals, and you end up in a vegetative state, more or less. You can't see, you can't think, and you are in horrible pain. It's like you have ascended into hell and there is no way out. In a sense, you can become, of course, a little bit stronger. So in the end, you are like a soldier the battlefield, and you just live with it. In another sense, it's a torture of the consciousness and the soul, especially. So it kills you from inside. It's not, you don't care so much anymore about the physical pain. It's basically the the fact that it's killing you, it's eating you up from inside. And at the same time, you see that nobody cares, nobody understands. And you are also manipulated into behaving as if everything was all right. And indeed, some TIs did not do that, or not everyone knew from the beginning that this was mind control either. They thought that they are getting sick. It's not the first thing you are thinking about when you are exposed to these technologies. Is not common sense for most people, and you can't believe that there is such evil in this world, and you don't even believe that it will go so far. But let me tell you that these are animals that will take you as low as they can. And some TIs die, of course, they kill themselves, or they die of heart attacks or other kind of mysterious reasons. Some are hit by trains, and so some also go out shooting. And we don't really like to associate ourselves with these TIs who are presented as mentally ill in the newspapers, because we're not proud, that some TIs go out shooting and get killed. It's both for the victims, but it's also for the fact that they get so weak and start doing that. But on the other hand, we also have to be honest, and to actually also welcome the idea that the perpetrators might influence these TIs to go out shooting, so that they can thereafter justify harder laws and more fear for psychiatry and psychiatric diseases. Because if you have that type, because when people end up in psychiatry, they lose their credibility, they lose their human rights, they lose their humanity. And by having a strong psychiatric system, you can cover up a lot of things, and at the same time you cover up a lot of crimes, and these are crimes really against humanity, and they should stop, and somebody should investigate it. Human rights organizations should have an interest in this technology, because it's not so hard to prove. You just need people who are willing to read radio frequencies and to take tests that are reliable of our water, our body, our environment, and to see what's happening, because we don't really know everything. But we are definitely let's know. We know from the perps, from the stalkers, from their infiltrators, we know what's happening, and we know very well that it is real. They let us know from the very beginning. I think that when they want to initiate you into the TI thing. And some of us live isolated without anyone around us. Some end up on streets, some end up in psychiatry, some live quite normal lives, but some are plagued also by diseases, and probably there are several types of research that they might do on us, or the type of torture, depending on what they can do. You know, if a TI that they choose out has a very strong family, they can't break that apart, because they go after the family first, usually the mother, so that they can destroy the family. And sometimes full families are destroyed like that. And they also have a thing for children. And I must say that the perpetrators are also extremely perverse. And I can't even imagine how somebody would allow a perp to get into a child, you know, for whatever reasons. And it's horrible. And I think that you know, it's not fairy tale, it's real. It's extremely dangerous. It's a technology that should be regulated, and you know, you should be able to go to the doctor or the police, and they should be able to check you out if you are a victim of this technology, because it's so easy to abuse it. It's the perfect crime. Everything is small and invisible. Thank you for watching.